And in more important developments, Britain and India have laid the ground for a possible post-Brexit bilateral free trade deal and signed off on a series of commercial agreements.
Brazil is hoping to benefit from the UK's vote to leave the EU. The foreign minister of Latin America's largest economy is pushing for immediate trade talks with the UK, along with the support of Mercosur, South America's trading bloc.
They didn't seem to, Stephen. At the end of the day, I think that that's something that we're seeing not just coming from the government here in the UK, but certainly from the government in the United States as well. Now, there's been a lot of buzz, as you mentioned, about the Crown Prince's visit to the UK and about the prospective visit to the United States and whether or not this PR offensive, this massive PR offensive that we've seen from the Saudis is really going to actually turn people against him because they think it's a little bit too much. But at the end of the day, as you say, these governments have very little choice. And it's interesting to note that when we look at this $65 billion of commitments in terms of future trade, in terms of security, in terms of deals that are going to be on the horizon, at least according to the government in the UK and in Saudi Arabia. If you look at that, it's more moves by the Saudis than what we've seen with Russia, certainly what we've seen with China, and certainly what we've seen with commitments to the United States.
Gulf leaders met in Bahrain for their annual summit last December. British Prime Minister Theresa May was guest of honour. At the end of the summit, it was announced the GCC and Britain would work together to counter security threats and deepen economic ties.
We have a strong relationship from our leadership to the leadership here and straight through to the business community. We want to build on that. We think that obviously the United Kingdom is going to look at developing trade relationships after the exit, after Brexit, and we want to be a part of that as part of the GCC. So we think that definitely there's lots of room for growth. And we're here specifically at a very high level delegation to engage with the government in the United Kingdom and also the business community.
The UK's 13 tech unicorns have wide-ranging habitats. There's food delivery. Deliveroo started trading in 2013 and is now valued at $2 billion. There's medical science. Benevolent AI uses artificial intelligence to develop medicines for neurological diseases. It's also valued at $2 billion. And there's e-commerce. The digital bank Revolut is the newest member of the club, reaching unicorn status in April.
For us, it's been a combination of hiring the right and the best people and making sure that we sort of internally, we always say we never settle. So we put our mind to something and we go for it.
Revolut launched in 2015. It provides commission-free money transfers and offers digital bank accounts that can be set up in minutes. It now has more than 2 million users and is preparing to launch a free-to-use stocks and currencies trading service later this year.
The main thing is we have a very forward-thinking regulator. So the regulator, the FCA in the UK, is very open to companies trying new things, taking a little bit of risk, being very innovative, and there's a lot of policy and structure in place that enables fintechs to do that fast.
The UK is riding a wave of investment. Tech investment for 2017 was double that of the previous year, and at almost $3 billion, it totalled more than France, Germany and Sweden combined. This unassuming part of East London is Britain's tech hub. It was originally dubbed the Silicon Roundabout as something of a joke. But thousands of successful startups later, it's now officially the country's tech city. And that name refers to more than just geography. Tech City is the government-backed incubator that was set up to help accelerate growth in the industry. In April, Tech City expanded, becoming a national network called Tech Nation.
It's not unusual now to see companies that we work with to go from 5 people 200 people in 2 years. That's extreme, that's unprecedented in the history of commerce.
Tech Nation is a privately owned company that receives 75% of its funding from the government. Its alumni include Skyscanner, Deliveroo and Zoopla. One potential unicorn is Edited. It does analytics for some of the world's biggest clothing retailers.
London is a hub, and you've got great universities within an hour's drive, and really great talent here. So it's a place that people want to move to, or have historically wanted to move to. So it's a really good place to find the right sort of people.
What do you attribute the success of tech companies in the UK to? Well, look, London is a great place for people to do business and invest in ideas generally, and there are a few sort of structural reasons for that. We've got 7 out of 10 of Europe's top venture capital funds are based within London, and then across the wider UK as a whole, the talent pools in those areas that the unicorns tend to be growing within are very, very big indeed. So 2.1 million people in the UK now work within the digital tech space. So it's a great place for business to happen, but it's not necessarily just people who are originally from the UK that are starting businesses here. You know, we heard in your piece there that Deliveroo has been a great success. Well, that was started by 2 Americans in London. We've now got other stories of unicorns like Improbable, for example, this really fascinating virtual simulation firm, started by 2 graduates in the UK, but most of the funding coming from Japanese banks. So it seems to be a place where UK-based people are doing well, but equally it seems to be a great hub for people from all over the world to come together and create businesses.
And the UK remains the largest recipient of FDI out of all the European countries. So perception-wise, it has taken a tumble. However, in terms of the actual performance, in terms of attracting FDI, it still remains the clear winner.
Now, of course, this is all about Brexit, which is coming up. The UK needs some wins abroad. So tell us more about that.
It is. Well, I think that's something that pro-Brexit people in the UK said would happen, that this would open up the possibility to open new international markets to UK companies that wouldn't have necessarily been possible as part of the European Union. And when you look at it in that context, I think the UAE makes sense. There's already really strong economic ties. So this is certainly a priority market now that the UK is looking to kind of expand globally.
Low-hanging fruit, you'd imagine, given the long-standing relations between the 2 countries.
Of course, and like I said, I mean, this is a region that there's already quite a bit of business going back and forth.
Yeah.
When you're still looking at, therefore, the UK ecosystem staying a step ahead of the game potentially in terms of investment, where then are we seeing specialisation? Today I'm hearing from the Mayor, Sadiq Khan, about artificial intelligence being the real key. Is that for you the key?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a deep tech investor, so I know quite a lot about the AI companies. And of the 5 billion that came in last year, 10% of that, so 500 million, was actually into AI, which is the biggest investment so far into AI from the UK. And the other big specialism is still fintech. So 1.5 billion of that 5 billion was fintech. And I think the UK still is a leading light in that. And AI in particular, we have some of the best research and development in AI in the world globally, which is why there are massive amounts of capital coming across from the rest of the world, both from China and the US as well as Europe.
The context of this is that we've had a pretty disastrous decade for pay. Real wages are still below where they were before the financial crisis. So that's the bad news. But the good news is that wages are rising now, and they've risen quite strongly towards the end of this year, rising at the quickest rate in about a decade, and rising above inflation, as it says. So there is some good news, but overall it's been a pretty poor decade.
Referendum, I think it was unfair to begin with. The people did not know what they were voting for and who we were voting for. People have lost faith in politicians because they're told lies all the time. People backtrack on the word. It's just a whole shambles. And business, we're shedding businesses like nothing on earth.
It's not true. We're actually, employment in Britain is growing. I mean, I think one of the things that's very dangerous about Brexit is the hyperbole, and that, you know, actually it's not as important as our political masters think it is. That is the reality. If you look at the British economy, actually the British consumer, the British economy is marching on. Employment has never been higher. Real wages are growing in Britain. Yes, we should be concerned about it, and I am very anxious that a deal is done. But it doesn't help to exaggerate the situation and make out that it's either going to be really easy or that it's going to be a disaster. It's going to be somewhere in between.
Never mind the fact that there were lies told. They told you you'd get 350 million. They told you Turks were arriving. They said they'd have 40 trade deals. None of it's turned out to be true.
The referendum 2 years ago was based on lies, and so much has come out in the press since then on the number of lies.
Could you please justify to me why I have leaflets saved at home, delivered to me by my local Conservatives before the EU referendum, stating clearly that we will save £350 million per week for the NHS if we leave the EU? That lie is the only reason why I, and I'm sure many others here tonight possibly, decided to vote leave.
The essence of a referendum is that you're instructing a government. A referendum isn't a general election. Because we're not used to them, a lot of people struggle with this. If people voted leave, they weren't electing Boris. They were voting to instruct the government to get out of the EU on the best terms we can get, advantageously to ourselves, but also being fair to our friends and allies in Europe. That is going to free up a lot of the money that we're currently paying to Brussels. But how we now spend that money, of course, will be a question for the British people in Parliament.
Was Boris Johnson right to have stood by that bus 2 and a bit years ago?
Well, this is a commitment that the government is making now. Yes, we can get some money back from the European Union, but actually it's 394.
So he was right to stand by the bus.
It's 394 million that we will be putting into the NHS
per week.
Per week.
So he was right to stand by the bus, Boris Johnson.
Well, the point Boris was making was, and the point people in the referendum was making, was that if we don't send vast amounts of money to the EU every year, we can spend it on our priorities back home.
Whether you are a Brexiteer or a Remainer, this is a deal that a nation signs only after having been defeated at war. This is not a deal which is fit for purpose for any sovereign country.
And what is so bad about it in your view?
Well, firstly, two things.
Okay.
I'll answer very directly. The first thing is that you are ceding control of whether you are going to get out of an international treaty to a foreign power. And secondly, much more importantly, effectively, if this deal goes through, all you have is an extension of the last 2 years of punishment until 2021 or 2022. It's the extension of the standstill, because the Irish backstop issue will still be with us in 2021. The uncertainty in business will still be with us. We are going to be having the last 2 years being repeated incessantly up until 2021.
And you have to understand what that hurt means. It means people's jobs. It means people's livelihoods. It means people experiencing chaotic lives, many of whom already have chaotic lives. I've got to say, for Charles, Eton, Cambridge, maybe leaving with no deal, no problem. For Jacob Rees-Mogg and his sovereign wealth fund and all those disaster capitalists, they will make money. But for ordinary people, they will suffer. They will suffer terribly. And it is a travesty that we have got to a place where a mainstream political party could want to wreak this kind of havoc on our country.
What really grieves me listening to this evening is that Brexit is going to make you poorer, that the resources you need, and even the political capital that is wasted on this debate on Brexit, when life and death issues are much more important. I find that very tragic.
A no-deal Brexit is one of the major risks to our forecast. Our forecast incorporate a smooth transition, that a deal is actually made, and that there is a smooth transition to the new setup. But if there is a disruptive exit, or if there is continued uncertainty for many more months, both of those are going to weigh negatively on growth going forward. And I think it is imperative for the leaders to resolve this uncertainty immediately.
The shock to our economy after leaving Europe would tip the country into recession.
This could be, for the first time in history, a recession brought on ourselves. As I stand here in B&Q, it would be a DIY recession. And it really matters to everyone. Someone actually asked in this debate the other day, you know, that's the economic case. What about the moral case? But don't they realize the economic case is the moral case? The moral case for keeping parents in work, firms in business, the pound in health, Britain in credit. The moral case for providing economic opportunity rather than unemployment for the next generation. Where is the morality in putting any of that at risk for some unknown end?
Within 2 years, at least 500,000 jobs would be lost. That's 80,000 jobs in the Midlands, over 100,000 jobs across the north, over 40,000 in Scotland, over 20,000 in Wales, almost 15,000 jobs in Northern Ireland. In London, over 70,000 jobs would be lost. Here, across the south, almost 120,000 jobs would go. And that's the lower end of the estimates. Across Britain, as many as 820,000 jobs could be lost.